No.
Great. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hosting again, you. Let me share my slides. And, here's what I'm hoping for you today. Let me get this into presentation mode. Here's what I'm hoping for you today. And it's what I hope from all my presentations. It's wherever you are in your business. I know we all might be in different places. We can get stuck from time to time, right? That's what makes business hard. We get stuck on many different things. So my hope for you today is think about someplace specifically where you're stuck. Let's help you get unstuck. Now, I'm not saying we're going to solve your business problems today. I'm not a smart enough guy to solve all your business problems. I can't do that for you, but I'm going to give you an idea, a method, a tool, a way of thinking that can maybe help you see things in a new way and find that breakthrough for you. If you're a fan of entrepreneurship, if you follow this business, you've seen there are many companies that are very successful today. They weren't so successful when they started out in the beginning. They had to pivot. They had to kind of find their way through. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So you read my the new name of the presentation. Here was the original one on the screen. I hope everyone can see my screen. If anyone can't, please shout out, say so in the comments. What lifting dumbbells and booking demos can teach you about mastering the messaging hypothesis. So funny thing, we learn, we test, it got cut off when it was posted in Score, and it was only the first two lines. If you signed up when it just said what lifting dumbbells and booking demos can teach you, I appreciate your faith and confidence that that would teach you anything. But really, this is about an approach, a hypothesis-based approach. If you're not, don't have a scientific background, if you're not into science, don't worry. I'm not either. We're just trying to learn from everywhere we can learn. Okay, but let's start with something very, very practical. We'll just start with a very, very specific change, a very specific example, very simple change. This was a publishing company. This was an experiment we ran. The CTA for the publishing company said sign in and order a sample. This was aimed at professors who are looking to get samples of books to consider if they were going to require it for their class that year. For the publishing company, this was a central sales channel, right? They wanted to get these samples into the professor's hands because ultimately, if the professor chose it for that class, then they had many, many multiples of sales. We tested on the CTA the call to action. Instead of that, request a free copy, right? You can look at those two. You can see what you think is better and why. The request a free copy got 132% increase in click through. Now, of course, wouldn't we all love that? You change a few words, you're more than double conversion. You make this huge improvement. I'm not going to teach you about those specific word stays so much, but I want to teach you about the process because it's not just about this specific change on this landing page. The idea is how did they get there? What process did they use? And that might give you an idea when you're stuck, a breakthrough process that you can use as well, right? So let's look. And this is the challenge I want to present to you. What really drives you? You're here today, you're a member of SCORE, you're probably a small business owner and entrepreneur, that you work hard. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of struggle, a lot of frustration. Sometimes you get, breakthroughs. What drives you? Is it money? Right? We see that a lot, of course, in business, right? We see these very successful business people, these towers with gold, driving limos, flying private jets. Oh, they make a lot of money, revenue, sales, orders, whatever, right? This would be a sensible thing that we are told should drive us, right? And I'm not even going to say any moral reason why money might be the thing to drive you, but money is a lagging indicator. It's not a leading indicator. And so Bernard Arnault, if you know who he is, Chairman and CEO of LVMH, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy, this is one of the richest people in the world. So you don't have to hear this from me. Look what he says. It's just a consequence. I always say to my team, don't worry too much about profitability. If you do your job well, profitability will come. Obviously, he's making it sound easy. It's not. But my point is, if you are so focused on the money, revenue, sales, whatever it is, right? That's the outcome. That's not going to get you there, right? It's a good thing to want to make a lot of money. Totally fine. My only point is, if you're looking for those key changes in your business that are going to give you that breakthrough and get you to that success you want, overly focusing on the money is not going to be the thing that does it for you. Because again, the money comes after you make that change, after you make those key changes to get results. What about the competition? This is a place we often focus. We can be competitive people. Oh, we just want to beat this one and that one, right? And the best way I could talk about this, I did a whole other webinar about competition and how we can learn from them and how we can use that for our success. And you can see the replay of that. We have it posted somewhere. But I just love this joke because it's a great example. It's this old, I think it's a Russian joke about these two guys are neighbors in a small village. Ivan had a goat. He got milk from it every day. Boris had no goat. He was envious of Ivan and his good fortune. And sometimes we feel this way towards our competitors. And one day, magical genie comes along and asks Boris, what would you like? I can grant you any wish, right? You would think Boris would say, I want riches. I want gold, silver, money, whatever. A herd of goats, even one goat. But no, he looks at the genie and says, I wish for Ivan's goat to die. And I worry this is how sometimes we can be when we're focused on the competition. We're less thinking about how can we better serve our customer, how can we win. We're like, how can we beat them and how can they lose? So I would make this argument, and this is all up to you. Competition is not the place to focus. Okay, what about activity? I'm sure you've seen startups like this. I'm sure you've seen entrepreneurs like this, right? Oh my, we're all so busy, right? They're so busy. We're working all the time. My gosh, we're doing so much. You look at them from one meeting to the next, they're on their phones and this and that, and they seem like they're doing so much, right? Seems like the type of thing that people should do. But I'll quote the great Gandhi as he said, speed is irrelevant if you are going in the wrong direction. We don't just want to be busy. We want to be doing the right things in the right way, right? So what can get us there? Here's my pitch to you today. And we're going to go through a whole methodology, but I just want to get you thinking of where you should focus. What about curiosity, right? Curiosity. And now you're like, oh, this is like preschool time. You're telling us to be curious. No, hear me out, right? One, curiosity will lead to that money because when you're curious, we're going to solve problems that matter to customers or find a better way to do things, right? Find a more efficient way to produce curiosity, more efficient way to manufacture. It will help us beat the competition because it will let us learn from them instead of focusing only on their flaws and trying to beat them. And it can discipline that activity because it will help us find the right direction, move in the right things to do, not just so many different things. So we feel busy, we look busy, we feel like we're doing the right thing. So again, don't take it from me. I host the How I Made It Marketing podcast, as I mentioned, get all these key marketing leaders on. And, one of the key things, marketing and business leaders, one of the key things they tell me, the final question I ask in every episode is, what are the key qualities of an effective marketer? And I think often applies to an effective business person. And time and again, curiosity comes up. And one thing you'll see on these slides, again, I'm going to share them on my LinkedIn after. I know people always ask for the slides. It's helpful to make it more helpful to you. I include source links all throughout here. So all of what I'm, presenting today is based on articles I've written, interviews, done all these things. We can only scratch the surface in the time we have. If anything interests you, tickles your fancy, inspires you, you can click on the links in here and go deeper. Here are some of the episodes. One, I'll give you an example. Jackie Voles. She's a chief marketing officer and strategy officer of Gelmar, which you probably haven't heard of Gelmar. It's a holding company for CLR and Tarnex or cleaning products. But she also worked at some other companies that made, I forgot the name, it's a famous company, but they made different things you put in your house, which I know is a very, very vague way of putting it, but like bowls and candle holders and all these things, whatever that's called. I forget. I'm not the target audience for that. I don't know exactly. But one of the things, the problem she said they had was it was so expensive to make these molds. Right. It was very expensive to make these molds, yet all of their customers wanted unique products, right? So they would be different from different stores. And their customers were stores like Walmart. And she said, even Walmart, even as big as it was, it didn't really have the volume to make us have anything other than a really low margin for our product, right? Because it was so expensive to make these molds. So they had to make very, very, very many of these products. And they didn't want to make unique ones for each store, even though that's what the stores, their customers wanted. So what she did, she put her curious hat on. She was a marketer, but yet she dove into the production process and manufacturing. She went to the factories in China. She learned how things were going on. And what she learned was, and again, this isn't my expertise, I could be a little wrong on the details, while the molds themselves for the product they made, which I think was metal or glass ceramic or something like that, that they needed a very, very high volume in order to pay for that mold and to spread out across different products. They could add on other types of things to that base ceramic, I think with rubber or plastic, whatever it was, right, from these Chinese factories for a lot lower cost, right? So basically what they could do then is they could make unique products for all of these stores by having their core product, right? But another product, they can make at much lower volumes added onto that core product. So now there's different versions of it, right? And again, that's not my thing. I don't totally understand it. But what I do understand is Jackie didn't just say, oh, I've got this problem. Oh, I've got low margins. Oh, let me increase the price, right? Because the customer's not going to pay more. Or, oh, let me tell the stores I can't do this because the stores don't care. They'll find someone else. She said, let me get curious. Let me really understand the different elements of this and how it works. Now, again, curiosity, I'm sure you've heard about it before. But what you need is a methodology, a way to discipline that curiosity. And that's what we're going to talk about today. It feels pie in the sky. I'm going to give you a clear methodology that I pause this framework. I'll also say, this is why I say the things about lifting weights and stuff. You're probably already doing this, right? You just haven't outlined it like I'm going to outline it, right? It's undefined, it's undisciplined. Maybe some of you have defined it, right? But as a way to take your activities and define them and discipline them to learn more from it and get more rest and wring the business value you can get out of them. I'm going to show you how to do it. Again, it's simpler and quicker than it sounds. The word hypothesis might sound scary. I'm going to show you some real examples to spark your next great idea. And whenever you feel like it, your questions. So there's this great thing that we are in the same place at the same time. Maybe not physically, but thanks to the power of whatever Zoom does and how it does it, we're in the same place at the same time. You're not just watching a video. Remember that. You can watch the replay if you want later. Anyone who's watching the replay won't get this. I'm here to help you. We're here to help each other. Please use the chat, share your, whatever's worked for you, share your observations, help each other out, but also use that Q&A feature like you mentioned. Ask any questions so we can help you solve your problems. So this will make sense to you and you can leave today with value to help you get unstuck. This is me. You told you a bit about me, but basically, how do I know anything at all, right? You're listening to me talk. Why should I listen to this guy? I've been doing this for 26 years as a writer in marketing. That's not all of business, but that element. But a key thing that I've done is I write marketing Sherpa case studies. I interview marketers on how I made it in marketing and other things. And so I've learned from these probably over 1,000 different business leaders and marketers and entrepreneurs, right? That's where a lot of this comes from. Those are some of the examples you're going to see. And our parent organization, known as Meclabs AI, has conducted thousands and thousands of marketing experiments and has a patented methodology for a lot of these things that I talk about. So that's a little bit about us, why we know these things. With that, let's jump into, we call it the scientific messaging hypothesis. Again, there's that word hypothesis. It sounds scientific. I'm not a scientist. If you're not a scientist, don't worry about it. But here's what I try to do in my life and my career, and I hope you do the same. I try to look around, get that curiosity, and learn from other industries, right? And we can learn from the scientific process, even if we're not scientists ourselves. All right. So here is the hypothesis structure. I want to start with this real simple slide to show you how really simple it can be. The if, by, will, because. That's what it is. It's those four things. I'm going to break them down for you. We're going to show them to you and stuff, but it's just those four things. If, by, will, because, right? So let's start. You're going to have this if statement. And I'm going to show you an example, right? But this if statement, if we did an example from what I showed you in the beginning, remember in the beginning, I showed you all they did is change a few words in the call to action button on a landing page, and they got a 132% increase, right? Of course, to get that big of an increase, it's got to be something deeper. It's just not about those words, right? So the approach to do that was creating a hypothesis to understand and learn something, right? So the if in the statement, you'll see examples, that's a summary of what you are trying to do, right? The if is a summary of what you're trying to do with this hypothesis, right? So for example, in this one, it's very simple. If we change the call to action on our landing page, there are many different things that they could have changed. There are many different things that they could have done, right? But they chose to change the call to action. That was where they focused, okay? By, what are we going to remove, add, or change? And I'll get to that in a bit. But this is how you're going to do it. You want to be clear enough here that actually, if you handed this to someone else, someone you work with, but it's clear for yourself, right? So you know what you're doing, but also if you handed it to someone else, they would understand it as well, right? So it got to the specificity of by changing the wording from sign in and order a sample to request a free copy. That was the exact change that we're going to make. The will statement. This is where you know if the hypothesis, if the thing you think will make a change did or not. What is that metric or what key thing are you going to look at so you understand? You're not just doing random things in your business and you don't know if they're working or not, right? So in this case, the will statement was, will the CTA get an increase in click-through, right? And again, got all their source links. You can click there. You can learn more. This was actually a shared chat I did in Meclabs AI. It breaks this down deeper. You can even talk with it, brainstorm with it, ask the data scientists in Meclabs AI more about this, right? And lastly, the because statement. This is the customer insight, right? In this sense, they said, because the customer perceives a high level of friction, perhaps even monetary costs from our current process, right? That is why the thing would actually work. There's power there, right? It's not just changing a few words. There was this difference in the customer's head, if, by, will, because. So now I'm going to ask you a question. You can answer in the chat, and I maybe gave away the answer already because I got my opinion. You could give your opinion too. Which part of the hypothesis do you think most impacts your conversion, right? Which, if, by, will, because. Which of those elements, I'll look in the chat if you've got an opinion. There's no right or wrong answer. I've got my opinion. You might have yours. I do see a question from Morgan Stone. How do I improve in areas of my business that I'm not so good at? I can't afford to hire a bunch of employees and start delegating things left and right. I have to figure it out myself. How can I speed up that learning process? Thanks. Yeah, that's a great question, Morgan. So I think one of the answers, the second half of the answer, I think, is this hypothesis kind of framework that we're going to talk through. The first answer, I did, and I can, if anybody wants to email me, I'll tell examples of things I've shared. You can always email me. I can send you follow-up links. I interviewed the co-founder of Priority Bicycles. His name was Connor Swagel, on how I made it in marketing. And I think they've been in business like 11 years now, 14 years now. And they started out with a Kickstarter. They did great with a Kickstarter, raised some funds. They were just all working day jobs. They started this Priority Bicycles business, and now, they've been in business all this time. And one of the key things she taught me was everything these days, everything is learnable, right? So if anyone's seen what was that Matt Damon movie where he was a genius back in the day? Good Will Hunting, right? Good Will Hunting. And so if you've ever seen that movie, he's a janitor. He's not very well off, but he's a janitor at Harvard. And so he's around all these, Harvard, they tend to be wealthy kids, but they're also getting this amazing Harvard education. And he's trying to pick up a girl at the bar. He gets into this debate with this other guy, and he just knows all these things. And at the end, he says, I learned all that with $5 of late fees at the Boston Public Library, and you paid $50,000 to learn it or whatever, right? That was back in the 90s. Now we have the internet and all these things. There are so many places to learn, right? If you really want to, even if you have to do it yourself, go and find whatever that thing is you want to learn. And as an example, Connor told me about how they hired, I think they took $3,000 they spent to get pictures of these bicycles for, their advertising. And they just weren't right. They weren't super excited about them. That was a lot of money to them at the time. They realized for that same amount of money at the time, they could have bought the best camera and tripod and, whatever the things they needed, lighting and all that stuff, and taking the pictures themselves. But they had to invest the time, he said, in YouTube, learning all of these things. They built the skill set themselves. And that lesson, he said, everything is learnable. And that's the truth. Everything is learnable. Marketing Sherpa, we got tons of stuff we can teach about marketing. Whatever that thing you're trying to learn, there's stuff out there. But then, again, like I said, Morgan, you've got to take that idea and think, okay, I think I learned this. Let me try it in my business and use this hypothesis process to speed up that learning process. What's working, what's not. Test small things and move bigger and bigger. That's the advice I'd give you. If anyone else has kind of lived through that, let Morgan know your thoughts as well. But let's see. We got Darren says because, April says if, Kent says because, Dragon says because, Gigi says if, and Samantha says bye. Okay, no one said will. So again, there's not one right answer, but I would agree with Darian and Kent and Dragon. I think it's the because. And this is why. The because gives you that customer insight, right? Or the insight about whatever it is you're trying to change. So it's not only the thing you're doing it's why did that thing work? And when we take that approach, we're not just making random changes. Yes, so in that example, they made that one change there and they got that lift, but now they've learned something about their customer. And now they've built what we call their customer theory, and they can use that in their business going forward in different ways. So when you're going through this hypothesis statement, I really encourage you, focus on that because. Make sure there is an actual because statement. Make sure by taking this hypothesis, by making this change, by doing this thing, you will learn something. Because then, even if it doesn't work out, you've gained, right? Even when you get a loss, you still get a lift in a way because you've learned something. Even if you learn something that doesn't work, right? What was it, Thomas Edison that said, I didn't fail, I just learned 99 ways it didn't work? Because he's taken the hypothesis-driven approach. All right, so here is my encouragement to you now. If you see that, and you're like, look, I'm not a scientist. What the heck's going on here? I don't even have time for that. Let me tell you, you're probably doing this already. You probably are. You just haven't outlined it this way. And this is an example. Oh, here's a bunch of, like I mentioned, we got a bunch of free resources. We got an event coming up tomorrow. We got an event coming up Thursday. It's all free. It's in the slides. If you have any questions, let me know. Free case studies, all that. All right, like I said, you're probably already doing this. And here's an example I love. And I use this example because when we talk about marketing, business, all business really, it is a relationship at the end of the day. So it's called a CRM, customer relationship management. These are all relationships. So like I said, learn from everywhere. We can learn from relationships. But I knew a guy, it's kind of a joke. He would say, here's my motto in life, lift weights, get dates, right? Haha, it's very funny. He's telling it as a joke. But really, if we unpack this and try to learn from it, this is a hypothesis, right? So what would that look like if we broke it out in hypothesis? Again, I say this, you're doing things in your life now like this. You just haven't broken down into hypothesis. If you did, you would better understand your actions, right? As the Zen Buddhist saying is, be in the moment, really understand why we do the things we do, and you would learn from them. And so, lift weights, get dates sounds silly, it's joking around. But what is he really saying? Like, if I had to write this into hypothesis, you can tell me a different way. Maybe it's different. If I get bigger muscles, right? That's the thing he's trying to do by the very specific by lifting 35-pound dumbbells, 10 sets, 3 times a week, right? If you ever know if you've ever tried to make any change in your life, you always want to be specific about what the change is, that you will be more likely to make that change. There's some sort of metric. In this case, I'd assume it's a man looking for women. It could be anything. Will 10% more women say yes when I ask them out? Why? Because women like strong men. That is what he's thinking in his head, right? And we're all thinking these types of things, right? So here's another business example, but I do think we have a question there before I go on to the business example. Got to start with the fun example, lifting weights, right? Was there a question there you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, another question. So could you put that resource slide, the one right before this one? There you go. Leave that up for a few minutes.
There you go. Yeah, I can just mention this real quick. marketingsherpa.com. Mention we have free case study and data articles at marketingsherpa.com/podcast. We have the How I Made It Marketing podcast. The Become a Marketer Philosopher course, and this is kind of when you think about the hypothesis-driven framework, that's all kind of that hypothesis-driven approach. It's totally free on-demand course. That's just meclabs.com/course. We have the AI Guild. You can join a community of marketers trying to figure out AI and doing these things together. Tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., we have a session called Let AI Agents Market for You. And on Thursday at 1 p.m., we have Design Your Offer. We're focusing on the offer value proposition. You might have heard me teach value propositions before. We're going to get deeper there. So there's all those key things. Obviously, the links are embedded, but feel free to email me, message me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, if you want to link to any of those things. And again, I'll post these slides on LinkedIn after the session. So there's that slide. Hopefully you captured it. Probably if you Google it, those things will come up as well too. Absolutely. Thanks to you. Okay. That was a fun example. We got to have a little fun with that. Let's get serious. Here's one I've heard a lot in business. You might have heard it as well. You might be doing it too. Demos are our highest converting channel. Right? You ever hear that? Demos are our highest converting channel. So we need to do everything we can to book more demos, right? And it makes sense because you can see, okay, where are we getting different sales? Well, if they did a demo first, we're more likely to sell. That would make sense, right? But let's break that down into hypothesis. Let's see if it really makes sense. Let's see what we can learn. So the hypothesis, I think, would look something like this. If we get more customers to want to book demos, right? How would we be able to use this? We'd have to get more customers to want to book demos by, and when we take this approach, this tends to be what happens, by running ads that promise a $50 gift card to anyone that attends the demo. I don't know if you've seen these. I get these emails all the time. People want to pay me $25, $50, whatever, to get on a call with me and show me their product. I'm sure you get a lot of these too. Because again, there's that thought that demos work. And this is key, you got to get the right will statement here, will sales increase by the same percentage or more that demos increase? Right? It can't just be that they increase, because if we're doing any activities, hopefully we're going to get an increase, but it's got to be at the same percentage or more that the demos increase, because we know that demos are working. Because, and this again is that learning, that great learning that they're saying that they think they know, they think demos are a great value to interactively show the product's value. They're a great channel for that. That's why this would work at the end of the day, right? Okay. Now, what about if the will statement didn't come true, right? Then it would mean essentially, right, sales did not increase by the same percentage or more. And what was it because, right? Because what we essentially did is we attracted people interested in the gift card, whatever the incentive was, and not our product. And that's why it would not have worked, right? So if you know the Meclabs conversion index, conversion sequence, I've taught this in other sessions. I don't have time to get too deep into it now. I can answer any basic questions. But basically, it's the patented framework we've come up with based on our experiments, one of our heuristics. It's a thought tool. It's not an equation to solve. And it breaks down the different factors that you need to understand to increase conversion. Again, there's a source link. You can learn more. But in this case, it was motivation. We tapped into the wrong motivations by doing the demos, right? Because essentially what were we doing? Originally, this would be my argument if the demos don't work. Originally, I would say maybe the demos converted higher, not just because it is a great channel to communicate your product, but you're interacting with the audience. right? You're interacting with a potential customer. They want to be there. You can answer questions. You could show them exactly how it works, all of that stuff, right? That's probably one reason. But another reason was probably the motivation of the customer. Because who's gonna book a demo, right? Who's gonna book a demo? It's gonna be someone really interested in your product. They might have bought anyway. They might just want to take that final step. They're really, really interested. So what happens when you try to get more demos by running an incentive is you're changing the nature of the motivation of the potential customers you're talking to. No longer now are you only talking to people who are motivated to book the demo. They really want to learn about your product. Of course, they're more likely to buy. Now you're booking people who, who want a $50 Barnes and Noble gift card or whatever it is you're offering, right? That is their primary motivation. It's kind of like the timeshares. They'll sit through your demo, sure, because they want the gift card, right? So again, I'm not saying, and this is different for each product. I've presented this before, and someone, in our AI guild, and someone was speaking back. Wait a minute, demos are great. I love demos. They work. They really work for me. Hey, they might work for you. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying when you make these changes, what the hypothesis driven framework does for you is it makes you understand. You understand your own thinking better, your company's thinking, right? Why you're making that change, and when it works or not, you're learning something. Right? Hopefully that all makes sense to you. So here's one example I've done myself. I've done with our organization. This is the event we have tomorrow, the Get Productive with AI. Oh, it used to be called Get Productive with AI. We changed the name to, I think it's Let AI Agents Work for You. We changed that session some. But anyway, originally our CEO gave me this challenge. He said not enough people were attending the live version of this course that we were offering, right? Not enough people were attending it live. So this is very hard to do, and this is why the hypothesis framework helps. I'm close to this. I thought he was doing a good job teaching it. I liked the value of it. He wasn't even the one teaching it before. Someone else was teaching it. I knew how much value people can get from it. And I thought it was great. You know what I mean? So I had to take the hypothesis framework. I had to step back and say, why could this be? Right? Let me look at a hypothesis way. Okay. And so you understand a bit. The way we were offering that course, MEC 200 Design Your Offer, was as part of the AI Guild, right? We would offer this, and we still do a free 3-month scholarship to the AI Guild. People can jump in, just start learning. And then what we did, our hypothesis, whether we realized it or not, was let's provide lots of value to help marketers and entrepreneurs with artificial intelligence, right? So what we did when they signed up for that free 3-month AI Guild membership, and we still do this, is there were so many things. We had a main community session. We had all these courses, MEC 50, 100, 200, 300, 1,000, we have a circle community. We still do, and so we thought, okay, if we offer all this value, we're going to increase attendance for these live sessions of our courses because marketers and entrepreneurs, they're going to consider this a compelling value proposition, right? It makes sense when you look at it on the surface. Let's offer a lot of value. People are going to sign up. We're going to get more people in, But since it wasn't working, I think what was happening, so we were not increasing attendance. The value, I worry, was being overshadowed by too much friction, right? So this came from a good place. We said, let's give a lot of value to people, and it was working for some people for sure, but for some people, right? And again, looking at this conversion sequence, there's too much friction. Friction are elements of difficulty through the process that get people less likely to purchase, right? So if you think about it in a physical sense, friction might be, there's a long line, right, at a checkout. Like, oh, you're going to bother checking out or not, that's friction, right? On a web page, friction could be like a long form or something like that, or many steps in a process, right? In this case, it wasn't a checkout flow. They'd already signed up. But now once they signed up, we're giving them all this value. But there was too much friction. We're overwhelming them. That was my thought. So what we did, and again, when you hear this, you're not going to be blown away. It's a pretty simple idea. I said, let's try this. Let's try removing that friction of attending, MEC 50. There you go. That's what it's called now, Let AI Agents Market for You. Let's just do it as a standalone event for marketers and entrepreneurs. They can just easily register on a one-off basis. It won't be inside the AI Guild. They can join the AI Guild after because there are other things we can do in the AI Guild, like coaching, like the circle community, all these other things. But it's just a standalone event. They can easily sign. Will this increase the attendance for those live sessions because the value of attending outweighs the cost and the friction, right? So when you look at that conversion heuristic I showed you, the C equals 4M plus 3V and all those elements, if you break it down to everything, all we're saying is this: there's cost and there's value. When the value outweighs the cost, people will take an action. When the cost outweighs the value, they won't. And cost is more than just monetary. In this case, cost can be friction. It's too hard to figure this out. There's all these things going on, right? So for any conversion you're taking, that's essentially what you're looking at. Anything you're asking someone to do, does the value outweigh the cost, even non-monetary cost? So that was my hypothesis. And we got a 10x increase in attendance. The number 10x is thrown around a lot. It was literally a 10x increase. It was great. And again, I think, if you're seeing this, you're like, okay, this isn't rocket science. You basically did a webinar, which is what we're doing now. Score figured this out, right? And that's so true. That's essentially all we did. But I bring it up, and this is where the hypothesis framework can help, because we are so focused on our business. 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours a week, whatever it is, we're so focused on every element of our business. We know the value so well. We know the process so well. We know everything involved in it so well that we can have these blind spots. And for us, I would say the blind spot was even though we know these things, we create the heuristic. We feel like, let's just keep giving them more. We're going to give them so much value. It's going to be great. We're really helpful. It's going to be great. What we didn't see on the other side is we knew everything that was involved in all these machinations that it took to do this. We're overwhelming people, right? So I love this quote by John Maynard Keynes. The difficulty lies not so much in developing new ideas as in escaping from old ones. So I'm talking a lot about marketing. This webinar is really about business strategy. I'm using marketing as an example. It's what I know best. But wherever you're struggling right now, wherever you're trying to improve, wherever you're trying to get unstuck, that is probably the challenge you're facing, right? It's not necessarily coming up with those new ideas. You have certain old ideas baked into what you're already doing in many different ways in your business, right? You have all of that baked in. And what you do with the hypothesis-driven process, like I tried to show with the demo, the lifting weights, and what we were doing is now you're questioning yourself. You're questioning, why are we doing these things, right? I'll give you another great, just very human example. It's from an old joke. I love jokes. By Michaela. My name is Daniel Burstein on LinkedIn. I'll post the slides on LinkedIn right after. It's the easiest way to get it for you. I don't have everyone's email addresses yet. So just go to my LinkedIn after this. I'll post the slides. This goes back to an old joke I used to love. A grandmother, her daughter's asking her mother, she sees her mother cut off the sides of a brisket. Brisket's like a long to beef before putting it in the oven. She cuts off the sides of the brisket, puts it in the oven. And the daughter asks her mother, why do you do that? Is there a reason for why do you cut off the sides before you put it in the oven? And she's like, well, my grandma always did that. So that's why I do it. And the daughter thinks, okay. So then she goes to the grandma and she says, Grandma, why did you always cut off the sides of the brisket before you put it in the oven? Because your mom does that. And she's like, oh yeah, I always did that. She's like, well, my mom always did that. So I always did that. So she was lucky her great-grandmother was still alive. She goes to her great-grandmother and says, great-grandmother, why did you always cut off the sides of the brisket before you put it in the oven? She's like, well, my pan wasn't big enough. Right? And that's what we're doing in our business. Sometimes the pan wasn't big enough or whatever happened 2 years ago or 3 years ago while we did something. We're in a totally different environment now. And we're still doing the same things. Hypothesis-driven development can help you look at that and think, okay, why are we really doing this? All right. Now, see me on other things I always say, I didn't have this when I started my career. AI is kind of that little cheat sheet. It's kind of that little way of, I don't 100% rely on AI, but it can get you 80% of the way there. And with this, also, AI is really helpful with brainstorming. So you can go into AI and you can ask it these different things, and you can have it challenge your model and challenge what you're doing and help you come up with new hypotheses. This is really helpful. I know the person, Morgan, who mentioned before, but you want to improve this area of your business that can't afford to hire a bunch of employees, right? Especially if you're a solopreneur, even if you feel like you're all alone. I work with a bigger team now, but you can say I work from home now. We used to have a building over by Mayo Clinic if you're in Jacksonville. We sold it to Mayo right before COVID. We got really lucky there, but I work from home now. And so I still obviously collaborate with my coworkers, but it's not the same when they were sitting right next to me. And I collaborate with AI a lot now, so it can challenge you. So I asked, here's Conversion Pro, Meclabs AI, use whatever AI you want. So I tried to give an example. I'm trying to get people to join the AI Guild. What is my hypothesis for me in that conversion objective? I gave it my landing page so I can see the landing page. So I can say, and you can give it whatever thing you're working on. You've got a flyer, whatever it is, your business plan, whatever it is that you got signed, right? I can say, take a look. Here's what I'm doing. What is my if by will because framework, right? Like when I tried to create those hypotheses, I was trying to create myself. I was trying to say, what are we doing here? And it helped me think. But AI can give you a second opinion. Here's what it came up with. By the way, like I said, the source you can see in the slides. I'm sharing all these chats with you. You can click, you can go to the chats yourself. You can play with them. You can see them yourself. I'm only taking like kind of small screenshots. There's a lot more here. But this was the if by will because framework it gave me, right? And so then what I said was, okay, give me alternative hypotheses I can try. Because this is what we really want to do. So we want to get an understanding of what we're doing right now, but then we want to get different ideas of what we can do. So you can see on the screen, give me all these alternative hypotheses. Again, I will really encourage you, reiterate, in my mind, everyone thinks of AI differently, probably. AI is not, actually, here's what our CEO says, and I love it, Flint McGlaughlin. He says, AI is not a vending machine, right? Sometimes we feel like we do that. We put it into AI, we push the button, it comes out, it's perfect, right? No, right? AI, but what AI can do is get us in the realm. So even if it gives you these first hypotheses, even if they're not right, push it, ask it other questions, challenge it, right? What you can think of it, I like to think of it as if you had an intern from like MIT or Yale or whatever the most just brilliant genius IQ intern, and they came into work in your business, what would happen? Yes, they'd be brilliant, but they wouldn't know your business as well as you would. And they would need your direction, right? And that's the same thing with AI. So you need to push back. You need to tell it, all right, here's why you're off. Did you consider this? Did you consider that, right? I didn't go deep there. Just want to reiterate that. If you go to AI and use it for the first time, you're like, what's this? That's what you need to be doing. But gave me an idea here. I forgot, what this idea was. So if visitors see active community engagement success story. So that was one thing we tried. We didn't really currently have that very deeply on the AI Guild page. I think we have some testimonials, but that's one idea. How can we get more people to join the AI Guild? Make it more about, dynamic testimonials, real-time discussions from current members. Right now, to get into the discussions, you've got to sign up for the AI Guild. It's in a software called Circle, if anyone's used that. Right? So you got to get a login. It's a private community. It needs to be in there. You can't see the interaction right now. So that value is hidden after someone signs up, even though it's a free sign up, they still got to sign up. Right? So Meclabs AI is giving me an idea here. Conversion Pro, it's saying, hey, maybe what if you took some of that and put it on the main landing page and more people sign up? I'm not saying that would be the thing. It would work. It didn't. I'm just saying, here's a process you can use. So if, like Morgan said, you're just kind of all alone in it, brainstorm with AI, have it give you alternative hypotheses. In this case, I use the Conversion Pro and Meclabs AI. Okay, here's some other things you can do to come up with hypotheses. So let's say you understand the framework now. You are on board. You are excited. After you get off of here, you're going to start creating some hypotheses based on what you're working on. You sit down with a piece of paper. Maybe you don't want to use AI. That's fine. And you got nothing, right? Have you ever had writer's block? I'm a creative. I'm a copywriter. Get writer's block sometimes, right? How do you come up with something? Let me give you some things to give you ideas to kind of get a thought starter going. So the first thing you can ask, and this is looking at the conversion list again, this is on the slide. The next slide's gonna be real busy. So I'm gonna paste in my LinkedIn again if you guys want to just look there. I'll try to post it pretty quickly after this session, but I have all the slides there. One, you can look at whatever you're doing, right, and say, what can we remove, add, or change? All right. Remove is a great place to start. I'll ask real quick before I go. Can anybody think of why remove is a great place to start, right? You can also add or change. Those are the three things you can look at. What can I remove, add, or change? Anyone have any ideas about why remove is a great place to start? Okay, I'll give it away. Simplify, yeah, it's simpler. It's the darn easiest thing you got to do, right? Sometimes you have to, that's a good reason too, to simplify. Sometimes you have too much. That is a very true reason. Sometimes you have too much, like the AI Guild example I gave. Removing is the easiest thing you can do right now. Think about how hard is it to create something. If you need to create a new ad, a new landing page, whatever, it's so much easier to remove. And I'll give you an example. We, back in the early days, we were working with a big credit card company, and there was a bounty or whatever it's called, a bonus if we hit a certain target. And so basically, I think they had like a 3-step process to sign up for their credit card. The first experiment our team came up with, the first hypothesis, they just removed the middle step, and conversion increased like crazy. And increased so much, I think they had to pay us this bonus. And they were kind of frustrated, like, that was so simple. Like, why are we paying a big bonus for that? And it's like, well, why didn't you do it then, right? So again, yeah, sometimes it's Madison says sometimes difficult to remove something if you're attached to it, but once you figure out it's not working, it often helps. Exactly. And that's again why this process can be so helpful. There's a great saying in writing, it's called kill your darlings, right? It sounds horrible. I forgot who came up with that. I think Emily Dickinson, maybe. And that's what we have to do as writers. Sometimes we get too flourishy in our writing. You got to go through that writing. You got to kill anything that's not really helping your writing. The same thing with whatever process you have with your business. So yes, you can get attached to these things. Removing is the easiest thing, but sometimes you have to add something, you have to change something. start there. The next thing, and what you're doing there when we're removing and or changing is to minimize perceived cost, right? Because that's the easiest thing. How can we take away cost from this, right? That's the example I gave you. The cost was in the friction. It wasn't monetary. The cost was in the friction. Just remove that cost. The second thing is remove add or change to intensify perceived value, right? This can be a little harder because sometimes you need to add something to it. Well, not only if I, sign up to clean our gutters, not only will we clean your gutters, but we'll clean your sidewalk or whatever, right? That would be adding more perceived value. Obviously, that's a little harder because it's going to cost you more to do it. And lastly, what can we remove, add, or change to leverage motivations? That can be very powerful. That demo example was something we tried to do, but that can be the hardest thing because motivation is something that is intrinsic in the person. So we can try to tap into it and leverage it, but we can't change it, right? And that's what they were trying to do in the demo example. All right, I think we got a question there, you.
Yeah, what is the software you mentioned again?
The one we use, our company's is Meclabs AI. You can go to meclabsai.com, try it out. But there's lots of different AI you can use. Ours is trained with, this hypothesis framework and all of our frameworks and conversion heuristics and all of our research and patents. But again, to use whatever AI you want, just play around with different ones and see what works best for you. And that's the session we have tomorrow too, by the way, at 2:30 is when we're teaching more how to create AI agents that can help market for you. Okay, now those are some ideas. Let's get a little deeper. This is a bit of an eye chart, but again, if you get the charts, this can give you different ideas. If we broke down the conversion heuristic into, I just wanted to give you all these different ideas under it. So the conversion heuristic can be helpful as a thought tool because we talked about this before. I live right across the street from Vistakon. They make contact lenses here for a lot of people in the world. And I say Vistakon, it's not like there's just one person on the assembly line that has a golden gut, right? But we treat marketing that way, and we treat business that way sometimes, right? Where you've got that good freelance copywriter or good agency person, or just know that good business person. That one has a golden gut and that one doesn't, right? And it's not like on the assembly line for contacts, you're like, ooh, Fred's coming into work today. We're going to have some good contacts. And it's like, oh no, Brad's working tomorrow. The contacts aren't going to be so good, right? No, it's not the golden gut. They've got a methodology, right? When I've taught this before, you even shared, I think, methodology in a mustard plant, how he saw that work, right? So basically, the way this reason is helpful is, and you can look, there's information about it all over the internet, is it's a methodology to help you think through different elements of a conversion process, which conversion is getting someone to take an action. It's core to marketing, but it's core to really anything you do with a business, even if it's getting the right accountant to agree to work with you or whatever it is, right? Getting the right hire on board. So you can look on the chart. There's lots of different ideas here. And it can just kind of, if you're stuck, it can give you an idea of where to start. Friction, hey, maybe should I just try a shorter form? Anxiety, should I try a money back guarantee, right? So there's hopefully just a lot of different things. If you're stuck, AI combined with those two slides, hopefully it'll give you just get the motor running. I know sometimes for me, it's really just once I get that ball rolling, then I can get some ideas. All right, I want to give you some specific examples. So we showed some before. Here's some deeper examples. Two things I showed in the slide when we talk about value proposition. Again, maybe it might make sense to do a whole session on value proposition here one day with you guys. But when we talk about value proposition, there's different levels of value proposition. So I just want to show you two examples, just picking some from the slide. Obviously, I can't teach you everything on the slide, but to showing you two examples of how this can work. So value proposition, the overall value proposition for your company, what we call the primary value proposition, is if I am your ideal customer, why should I buy from you instead of any of your competitors? But there are different levels of value proposition. And sometimes we make the mistake that we're selling that overall value proposition of our company too soon to a customer that's not ready to buy it in a wrong channel. So here's an example. This was with a company that sells Medicare offerings, right? And originally, they're trying to keep the page short. It makes sense. We all want to do that. We hear, not everyone wants to buy. Not everyone wants to read a long page, right? But that resulted in little value communication. So that essentially was their hypothesis, right? So then we came up with a new hypothesis, which was if we emphasize a process level value proposition. So process level value proposition, primary value proposition, that's what I said. That was the overall value proposition for the company. A process level value proposition is, if I'm your ideal customer, why should I take this specific action instead of any other action? So instead of selling the whole value proposition for your company, just sell it for a process. So you can see the hypothesis on the screen. They said, we're going to make the page longer. That's a trade-off we're going to make, but we're going to add more process level value. And this is what the new page looked like. You saw the one before. You can see, you can't read the entire thing, but some of the things they did, they didn't work on selling their Medicare product. Get a dedicated and licensed tele agent committed to simplifying Medicare for you. They even had some of the tele agents on the page with Q&As about them. So the whole thing they were selling was a process. They were selling, if you make this call, it's not that we're going to sell you Medicare per se. We want you to make this call because this person, we have these traded tele agents, goes all into it. They're going to help you make the best decision, right? So it changed it. What do we think when we see a CTA for a call? It's a sales call. They're trying to change it in the customer's mind. And I interviewed I have a whole interview online with the CEO of this company. I mean, that's really how he changed the company, or this division of the company is. He's like, I'm going to hire people who are going to be these really helpful people. They're really well trained. This isn't customer service. And they're ultimately going to help people make the best decision. Even if they don't buy from us, we're going to get the word of mouth. We're going to be like, this is the place to call for a very complex decision, right? But you can look, right? And at first glance, you're like, this page is longer. It's not going to work. No one's going to read all this, right? It's much longer. But they got 638% more leads. And why? They took that hypothesis-driven approach, they diagnosed it, and they said, let's try selling the process more. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, and they would have learned something. So there's another example, but I see there's a question from you. Was there another question, Hugh?
Yes. Basically, question is, can you do the same thing with perplexity?
Right. Yeah. So as I said, you can take, and I use Perplexity. I like Perplexity. And here's a little tip. If you got that Perplexity Pro account, you can play with the different models in there. So yeah, take any AI you want and try to brainstorm with it with this approach. 100%, go for it, do it. And if it works for you, that's great. As I mentioned, I mean, we have one, obviously I'm biased towards it. But I use other AIs myself too. It just helps because when I'm talking about some of these specific frameworks, it knows them. There's different specific experts and apps they're programmed in there. But again, use whatever AI you want to brainstorm with. And that's also an experiment. Test out different ones, see what responses you get, see what's helpful to you, see what's not. And ultimately go with the one that's best for you. So I will say, like for me, for example, when I use our own Meclabs AI for a lot of things, but one thing where sometimes Perplexity helps me, I use the Claude model. I think it's Claude 3.7. And it can come up with some pretty good interview questions for the marketing Sherpa articles I write. So Meclabs AI does two, but I worry sometimes Meclabs AI is biased to our own framework, which in this case is helpful because you're doing a hypothesis. But when it's someone just in general marketing that didn't necessarily use our framework, like for example, I've tested around and Perplexity with Claude comes up with good interview questions on me. So yeah, test it out, see what works best for you. Here's another example. This is product level value proposition, right? So again, we talked about the primary value proposition. That's that main for your entire company. If I'm your ideal customer, why should I buy from you? The product level value proposition is, if I'm your ideal customer, why should I buy this product instead of any other product? And especially that can also matter too if you have multiple products, right? So let's take a look at this original page. It was focused on, it's funny, kind of what we were talking about before. It was focused on more telling the customer stories, right? And that's could be a good approach. It could be an approach that works, right? It was not communicating the value of the overall category, in this case, home hemodialysis. So when we looked at it, we think the patient story approach primary can work for a lot of things, but in this case, home hemodialysis, and I think it was fairly new. I think we thought maybe the customer just doesn't understand that there's this machine that you can just do in your home. They just didn't understand that. It was a fairly new product, fairly new category. So if you look, there's the hypothesis, there's a new landing page. You can see there were still patient stories on it, but it more emphasized that machine itself. And in this case, 74% increase in conversion, right? So again, I'm not saying this would work for your product or every product. I don't know, right? That's the benefit of the hypothesis-driven approach. I'm saying by taking the hypothesis-driven approach, they were saying, what are we doing here? Are we just doing patient stories because we saw some other medical companies doing it? They said, what are we really doing here? And let's try something different that works in our unique situation. And in this case, it worked. So we got another question from you?
Actually, two of them.
Great.
The formula that you put up there, your formula is, you're being asked, is that patented or is, intellectual property?
That is our patented framework. Yeah. So we teach it online. I mean, you can look at it and use it and think about it. Yes. But obviously, if any other AI tried to program it into their AI, we would not be okay with that without licensing or something, because we do have a patent on it. So
fantastic.
But you're welcome to look at it and use it as a thinking tool.
Awesome. Could you put up the very first example slide? Person would like to see that again. Had 68% improvement.
Oh, this one here?
Nope, back one. There you go. There you go.
Oh yeah, so this was the previous. As you can see, the previous page, it was very simple and straightforward. Because again, there was that essentially they had a hypothesis that wasn't specifically articulated, but the hypothesis again was we got to keep it short. People aren't going to read long things. We're here to help. Here's a phone number. But the problem when they see this, do they really believe we're here to help, or does it just seem like a sales call? Right. So that's the difference. And that's why when you look again, it's a very long page, but using the hypothesis, they really, I mean, they had a Q&A with one of their tele agents here. They were really getting across that there's some process level value to calling us. All right. So here's just some quick bang, bang. Just keeping in mind that the main point I want to make, clarity of thought, clarity of strategy, clarity of action. If you can get your thinking really clear down with hypothesis, whatever you're doing in your business, you're going to have a clear strategy and know what clear actions for you and your team to take. So that's why, again, I'm just a lot of not this, but this. I won't read through every one. You can see them in the examples, but let's advertise our top products on rotating banner. That's what our competitor's doing, right? How many people have you heard? I mean, a lot of people do this. We've heard a lot. Okay, the competitor's doing this. I'll do this. I remember we do these value proposition workshops where we get in room with key leaders and we help them, figure out their value proposition, these quick win intensives where we help them figure out, their funnel and where their funnel may be leaking. I remember looking was a security company beforehand, and I looked at theirs, and then I looked at the main competitor in the space, and it was like the same exact stuff. And I remember asking them in that, why they did certain things and how I saw a similarity. And they're like, oh yeah, we look at what the main competitor does, and then we just try it ourselves, right? So hey, maybe that works, but understand with the hypothesis-driven approach, understand what you're doing and understand why you're doing it, right? Because I remember once at we used to have these big marketing Sherpa summits before COVID. And I remember, I think it was on a plane ride back with someone from the summit. And he was so excited. It was a great summit. It was fantastic. We're flying back from the Aria in Las Vegas. And I was in charge of the content on stage. And we did a lot of case studies. I'd interview people on stage. And I said, oh, what was your favorite case study? And he's like, look, don't get me wrong. All of your content was great. But he's like, at the networking event, happened to be the head marketer from our biggest competitor was there. A few drinks in, we really get talking. And I said to him, I said, hey, we're copying everything you're doing and it's not working. And he told me, yeah, it's not working for us either. And he said, that was so helpful. Freed us up. We realized we didn't have to copy them anymore. So again, just understand if you're going to copy your competitor, don't let the hypothesis be because the competitor's doing it. Why are you actually doing it? What does it mean to the customer? What are you going to learn? Right, here's some other ideas. We should go minimalist. I think there are some examples when I talked about remove. People brought up a lot of good points about simplification can work. That can work. But again, make sure you explain why it would actually work in this case, because customers are overwhelmed by too much friction on the page. We're removing from the page, right? We need more attractive imagery. Hear this all the time. Again, don't just use generic images. Why? What images? What would the images be conveying and teaching the customer, helping them understand about your product? And here's just a checklist that can help too. I think there's kind of two levels of this checklist. There's a technical criteria, right? Actually, what is in your hypothesis, right? Does it specify what those primary changes are like we talked about? Does it indicate the variables that you're testing? Like what changes are you actually making there? To what, right? What result are you going to get that's going to refute or support your hypothesis to let you know it's correct or not? And again, does it culminate in a customer insight? If it doesn't culminate in an insight, we're talking about marketing, so it's customer insight. Maybe it's another type of insight you need for your business. If it doesn't culminate in an insight, it's not really a hypothesis, and you really have to question, should you be doing it? But then the other thing is, not just to get a technically correct hypothesis, but an excellent hypothesis, will it produce a high impact or result? Because there are many things you can do in your business. There are many things you can create a hypothesis for, but this will help you prioritize. We can't do everything. Remember, we don't want to be that Lamborghini on the treadmill that I showed you earlier, doing all these different activities, right? But not really making an impact. You need to understand all the different hypotheses you could do. Is this going to be the highest impact one? Is it going to be worth the effort I have to put in, the output I'm going to get? What's the potential cost of not testing, right? Sometimes you have to understand that. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking a risk. If we don't do this, how's it going to hurt us? And again, generating those multiple hypotheses. So we talked about one here. Ultimately, you want several, and this is where brainstorming with AI can help. And then you can help decide, hey, what direction do I want to go, and what's the best direction do I want to go? Not just that I am stumbling forward, doing the same things I've always done. I need to make key changes, radical changes to pivot my business. What's the best one to make? Again, got a lot of free resources here. There's me. There's my email address. I guess I'll leave that one up. But with that, that's all I've prepared today, you. So do we have any other questions? Anything else we can help the audience with today?
Not at this point, Daniel, but I'm sure they will come. There was one comment when you're talking about trying different, different hypothesis, that kind of thing. There also is let's see, Morgan made the comment, there also is a cost of doing something that's wrong, which is true. I mean, you know, that's always a possibility.
So 100%. So two things. That is what's the cost of not testing? There's also what is the cost of testing, right? If you take off the wrong thing. But this is why we take the hypothesis-driven approach, because sometimes we do that and we do remove the wrong thing and we weren't really aware of the cost because we weren't measuring, right? That's the will statement. We also don't know why it was the cost because we don't understand what the impact was, right? And that's why if we take the hypothesis-driven approach and remove something, we're hopefully not removing things willy-nilly. By forcing us to sit down and do that, we're thinking through, okay, there's a sensible and logical reason to do this. But also what's the cost? And I'll give you a quick example. I stayed in a hotel a few weeks ago. I was doing a college tour with my daughter. And the very nice hotel, they didn't even have a newspaper. And I'm a big newspaper guy, right? And I remember back in the day when I'd be like, if you're a member of the hotel loyalty program or whatever, they would deliver to my door. I would get a Wall Street Journal and a USA Today. Sometimes at some hotels at the New York Times, right at my door, right? And then I remember it changed, and well, it's in the lobby. You could grab one. And then they started selling it in the lobby, right? This hotel didn't even have one at all. And something I saw during COVID, I've seen a lot of businesses, especially hotels, but a lot of other businesses, they used COVID as a nice, convenient excuse to remove things, to remove customer value, to worsen the customer experience. Why? Because it saved them money, right? Another example, they did the maid service was every other day, right? It used to be every day, remember? Now it was every other day, right? So they made these changes. Understandably, COVID was a crisis, but they didn't bring them back because they saw that as an opportunity to make some savings. But what they did is they kept making the customer experience marginally worse. And to your point, or Morgan's point, or whoever it was, right? Some of those changes, sometimes there's a tipping point where they removed too much value and they lost the customer. I mean, some things like a newspaper, it's like $1. I mean, it's a cheap thing, right? But they removed too many. Might as well stare at the Airbnb. But they removed too much value, and they lost something there. And so if you just did it stumbling forward, or you did it in a crisis moment of COVID, and you didn't go back and question, then maybe you removed the thing and you removed the wrong thing. But since you didn't take the hypothesis-driven approach, you weren't measuring, you didn't understand why you did it. You don't even know, right? Because that's the challenging thing. We see our overall business results at the end of the day, but there's so many factors that go into those results. We don't even know that that thing we removed 5 years ago is now hurting us. Starbucks, actually, if you look at their new leader, Brian Niccol from Chipotle, right? Starbucks worsened the in-cafe experience significantly. Right. If everyone used to go, I used to take my daughters to Starbucks when they were little. We would just hang out there. We would play chess and checkers and have treats and stuff. And then Starbucks became a place where you didn't really want to hang out anymore. Right. One thing, they removed the newspaper, like I said, a coffee shop with no newspaper. Right. And that's one of the things he was trying to figure out. What do we need to bring back into this in-cafe experience to get people to buy a coffee for $7, right? Because if you're just running into a drive-through real quick, it's worth $7, right? It's that some of that you need that in-cafe experience, a certain amount of time. That's what they're trying to figure out too. So and that's a multi-billion-dollar experiment they're running. Were there other questions to you?
Not at this point. A lot of accolades. People definitely enjoy what you presented. Did you mention that you're going to post your slides on LinkedIn after the presentation?
Yeah, I will put my LinkedIn here again. I think when I first posted, I didn't realize it was only to hosts and panelists, and that's something Zoom does when you're not careful. So I'll post it to anyone. So here it is. I'll post on LinkedIn right after this presentation. So, within 15 minutes, it should be up there. And again, there's tons of links in here, related links. So I scratch the surface with this. You go deeper into articles or episodes or any of this stuff that really, if something really inspired you, like, hey, I want to understand that more. There's a lot more in there. Or all those shared chats in AI. Click on one that AI will bring you up the exact chat I have with AI. You can chat with us some more too, and kind of get your own ideas from that.
Fantastic. I do not have any more questions. Something I do want to mention, David is going to be back, or Daniel will be back with us again May 28th. Topic of discussion then, get unstacked live group coaching on your advertising and marketing message. So if you'd like to have Daniel chat with you about that, please sign up for that webinar on May 28th.
Yeah, and I'll
Daniel,
just mention with
excellent
that real
job.
quick too. Yeah, I'll just mention with that real quick to you. If you email me what you need help on, where you're most stuck in your marketing ahead of time, I'll make some slides with some examples, and that's what we do the live group coaching on. So you can get some specific examples for whatever you're working on. I can do that on the spot, like we do here with the questions. When you email me ahead of time, got some time to think about it, I can put together some specific examples for you.
Fantastic. Again, no particular question at this point. So Daniel, I'd like to thank you again for your presentation today. Awesome information. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. Hope to see you all again real soon at another SCORE webinar. Daniel, take care. Have a good
Thanks for
day.
volunteering, you. Thanks everyone for
Oh,
attending.
my pleasure. Anytime. Take care, guys.